Assistive technology can feel scary for both parents and teachers. That's exactly why I brought Lucy to the Special Education Inner Circle podcast. I'm your host, Catherine Witcher, and I'm excited to chat all things AAC, assistive technology. Should you be using it? Should you not be using it? How do you start using it? We're going to cover all of that. So Lucy, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so we start the same way. Every episode, how did you end up at an IEP table?
So I really had a passion for special education for a couple of reasons. One being my own upbringing, like I was an IEP kid. So I saw my mom having to go through the process with me and my sister as well. And we happened to be at a private school. We were getting special education services through the public school and our private school. And because I had an IEP mainly for anxiety and OCD, and my mom fought for me to get an IEP because she saw it affecting my education, and she really wasn't taken seriously because they're like, oh, it's just anxiety, it's just OCD. And my mom's like, yeah, but it's having a huge impact on her. So I saw her really advocating for myself and my sister. So I got interested in special education because of my own experience. And then also in about like the 6th grade, our school had gone to an early intervention preschool, and we were doing like work in their garden, and they let us go into the classroom, and I saw the classroom. I was like, this is what I want to do. So my parents were happy because I didn't change my major 10 times like my sisters. It's just kind of grown from there. And I've been, this is my 8th year teaching at the same school and the same program. And it's like, could not be a match made in that. Like, it's a perfect fit. I love it.
We don't hear that very often. We don't hear that very often. Okay. So the fact that you've been a teacher for 8 years, been in the field for 8 years of special education, that doesn't happen very often anymore. Yeah. And you're at a place that you love. So I love that. But you know what? It hasn't always been easy for you. I know we were chatting earlier, you're obsessed with assistive technology. And I love that. I love that you're bringing this fresh perspective to, AAC and just going beyond some of maybe what we call the 1980s version of education in there. So share with me a little bit about how you started to work with AAC and some of the struggles that you had.
So when I first started it, my speech therapist at the time, she wasn't really on board with it. It wasn't her thing. She was nearing the end of retirement, and she just really couldn't be bothered with it. So my assistive technology practitioner or lead ATP for the district, she knew the situation, and she knew that the students I had needed it. So she basically sat me down and trained me and gave me the software and the licenses to everything that I needed to do, and just kind of took matters into my own hands. And it definitely was not easy because I basically was like learning this brand new language, and I'm not a speech therapist. But also for me at the beginning, and I know a lot of SLPs struggle with this, like the buy-in really wasn't there for me. Like I knew they needed it, but like, I was like, this isn't going to work. Like,
yeah. So let's talk about that. So you're a teacher, and your gut is saying like, my students need more. They need some technology, and you start, researching it and looking at it. Your SLP's not on board. Got it. So I think some of the struggle comes from like, when do you know that you should start pursuing this? Like, what kind of was that feeling or tipping point, or maybe like an example of like, I saw my student doing this and I knew something else would help. Can you give us kind of a visual perspective of what was happening?
Yeah. So the student in particular at the time where like, I knew I needed something more, is like simple visuals just like weren't cutting it. Like, you could tell she was like trying to communicate, and she was getting so frustrated, and we were seeing so many behaviors because she couldn't communicate. And I was like, so we need something more than just visuals, like something more complex and something more robust. But I didn't know what our options were. And that's when I turned to her SLP, and she's like, no thanks. And so that's when I went to the ATP, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll hook you up. We'll get this system started. And then I just kind of went crazy with alcohol. It just exploded in our room. Like, you get a device, you get a device, everyone gets a device. Because like I sometimes like our ATP, our speech therapist is like, pump the brakes. Like, do they? I was like, yes, they need it. Everybody needs it. And I think too, that's where some of my students' parents, they might struggle with accepting it a little bit too, is because, you know, when we look at AuComm, we're looking at it, some people focus on it being that this is going to be the student's main form of communication for the rest of their life. Like, this is their main piece of communication. But for some students, it's really just to bridge that gap. So like, I'll get students who might have select mutism. Like, I've heard that I had a student that spoke English and French. Like, he can talk. I've heard him talk. His mom comes to school, completely shuts down. Okay, that's fine. Then we need to give you a different means of communication. And so when we introduced that device, that parent was like, no, he can talk. He doesn't need this. And I was just like, just wait, it's going to promote that language. And sure enough, it did. And same thing with students, you know, that may only have 1 or 2, 3 words. And the parents are like, oh, I understand them, so they don't need that. It's also, devices are also used to promote that language. And we had talked about before, like, then we get them promoting that language and the parents like, where's the off button to make it stop? They won't shut up. Yeah, this is what we do though.
Yeah, this is what we do. Yeah, that's what I was sharing. You know, my brother with Down syndrome, you know, he does not have extremely clear language all the time. He speaks very broken sentences, you know, 1 to 3 word phrases. And I'm thinking, you know, like, gosh, technology would have been so great. I mean, because he made it so far, you know, you know, my mom, same thing. Somebody would say, you know, like, Robert, you need to be quiet. My mom says, I paid a lot of money and I advocated a lot to get those words. Like, don't tell them to be quiet. But I think about how much further we might be along. And I know that it's not too late. And yes, we can introduce it, but it takes buy-in in a lot of different ways, especially when somebody is older. So I love the fact that you're looking at this, you know, specifically in the younger years. So
yes,
so let's
have a huge,
I was gonna say, I'm like, we got so much. Let's talk about some things that I want, you know, everybody to hear. So if you were to give some takeaways of like, everybody in the IEP team needs to know these couple of things about AAC, so it doesn't feel scary to them, or they know, you know, maybe what a next step is if their gut is saying something different. Let's roll through some of the things that you want people to know.
I would say first and foremost, trust the process. I know it can be, as far as like, if you're a special education teacher and your SLP or HEP comes in with like this giant eye gaze device, it's overwhelming. And like, you as a special education teacher aren't necessarily the one that's like going to be programming that device. But it can be scary. And so don't be afraid to ask for help. And when you do ask for help, trust the process, because that's not going to happen overnight. Just like, it's like learning a new language or learning to read or learning to talk. Kids don't learn to talk without listening to you. Kids don't learn to read without you teaching them or showing them how to read. It's the same thing with the device. You need to teach the students how to use it. And sometimes you'll get students that like, they just come in, and if it's like, say like Proloco to go, and they're just like, beep, boop, 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 and they're like, they get it. Some kids, it takes months to like navigate that, or like, hopefully in the beginning you pair them with the right device, but sometimes you have to go between 2 different devices or like choose which is the right one. So just trust the process, and then don't overthink it, because that's like the biggest thing too, is when I go back to like, you get this device and you're scared of it and they're like, well, how do I use it? Well, you talk like you would normally talk, except as you're talking, you're pressing buttons or modeling buttons. That's really all it is. It's very simple. And the more you do it, the more, just like any other language, the more fluent it could become. Like, my assistant always jokes, when I'm up there like teaching, we have like a giant core board that we use during whole group. And I'm just like,
tell people what a core board. We have parents and teachers that are listening. So I'm like, oh, jargon. Tell us what you mean by that. So you've got this big board. What do you mean by that?
So the way core board is a symbol-based AuComm, and you'll see them in education purposes. You'll see them in low tech and high tech. And low tech meaning it's essentially just like a board. And it has different symbols, and the layout of it is done strategically for motor planning. They're color coded. Like, we use the Fitzgerald key. There's all science behind it. But for simple terms, it's basically just a board with the symbols on it. And that's what they would touch to communicate. So a core board for low tech, you're going to have your main core board, and that's typically your high frequency words, like your verbs and that sort of thing. And low tech usually has fringe, which is the like more lower frequency, like nouns and stuff and categorical type things. And those are up top. And then you manually flip through that. Whereas on a higher tech device, which the ones we most frequently see in education are like the systems are Lance, ProLoco to Go, and SnapCore. Your main like home screen is essentially the core board. And then as you hit like different folders and navigate to different parts, that would be more like the fringe type vocabulary.
I love it. That's good. So, and here's the thing, like if that just went way over your head as a listener, just know that we'll put some links below there. You're going to be able to reach out to Lucy. Yes. There's so much, like you can go down the Google rabbit hole for like ever on figuring it all out. Just know that there are experts that know this. There are teachers that are figuring it out. Just know that there are resources. So the fact that you even just built that foundation by listening here, like that's putting you ahead of finding what solutions are out there. So just core board, you want to start Googling that and see how those work. All right, what else you got for us? What else does an IEP team need to know? And when I say IEP team, everybody, you guys know, I'm talking about everybody. I'm talking about parents, teachers, admins, therapists. So what do you want everybody else to know about AAC?
It is 100% a team effort. A lot of the times I know, like, you see educators, oh, the speech therapist is coming, get their device out. Like, no, it's supposed to be out at all times. And as parents, like, you know, I love when parents are like just honest with me, because we get it. Like, you're at home, you're in survival mode. It's after school, it's after work. I know you can't always like use it 24/7, but like parents will tell me like, oh, we just leave it in the backpack, we don't use it. And I'm like, thank you for being honest, but let's work on that. So what I mean by it's a team effort, it's got to be used on all fronts. So in the classroom, not just in speech therapy, and at home. And there's a couple ways to go about doing that. What I find the easiest way to do it is just to make things more accessible is if you have that main core board with like the content fringe of whatever, like for the bathroom, just print that out, laminate it and stick it in the bathroom. And simple as that. So then you don't have to worry about, oh, where's the device? Is it charged? Like, can you go find it? Oh, it's under Johnny's bed. Like, it's right there. So you don't have an excuse.
That's an amazing strategy, you guys. Did you guys catch up? Like, I want to make sure that they hear what you're saying. You can combine high tech and low tech together. That's what I'm hearing is you're like, it's a team effort. And you're like, okay, so mom and dad, if you guys don't want to like carry the device into the bathroom and it's all a hassle and we got to do these things, like let's print out some tools and do that. Oh, I love that. I love that. So
well, and also too, and like, that's why I always do, everyone's like, I don't want to bring the iPad into the bath. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm not asking you to do that. So that's a lot of times too, why I do have low tech in the bathroom, because it's the bathroom, accidents happen. And like, if it's just a laminated piece of paper, we can just wipe it right off. And if it gets destroyed in the tub, so be it. But so I typically, I mean, they're easy to make. I mean, you would just take a screenshot. If you have a high-tech device, you just take a screenshot of it and print it out, laminate it. You don't even have to laminate it. You can put it in those like plastic sleeves or just like a Ziploc bag. Just make it super simple. And like depending on like what the students' goals are, like I mean, in my classroom, it's literally everywhere in our classroom. It's in every center. We have our giant core board. It's in the front, it's in the bathroom, it's on the door, it's in the hallway, it's on my lanyard, it's on the playground. Like it is literally everywhere. And it kind of serves like two purposes. One, you're exposing them to that language, but also you're giving them access to it where they might not always have it. Because me working with 3 and 4-year-olds, not all of them are seeking it out independently. And I don't expect them to. So just having it, like, again, like same thing in the bathroom, where's the device? Oh, their device is at circle. I'm sitting in the housekeeping center. I'm just going to grab this board and use this right here. And the one thing to keep in mind when you are using both high tech and low tech, make sure it is the same images and the same symbols system and the same layout. That's why I say just take a screenshot and then there's no room for error, because if you start using like symbol sticks for this one, and then you print out like a free board from Project Core, it might be different, and that can alter students' scanning abilities with the different placement in the motor planning. So just keep it consistent. Kids can generalize between the two, but just in the early process, just make it as consistent as possible.
It makes total
and just literally AAC everywhere.
Like, forget your home decor, forget your school classroom decor. We're just going to put core boards everywhere.
I have pictures on my Instagram. It's literally just everywhere.
I love it. I love it because you know what? We are a communication-based society. I mean, if you can learn to ask for help, if you can learn independence, if you can learn to communicate your wants and needs, I'm not even talking about, having a in-depth critical thinking, conversation. I'm talking about some basics. If we can nail that,
right,
then we can build to that next level.
Well, especially in the community of our classroom, a lot of these kids, it's their first time in school. Sometimes kids come to us with devices through Medicaid or private speech, but usually it's their first time. So they need to be taught how to use it, but they've also this is how they need to be taught how to speak. Just how you would speak. This is their language. And it's really interesting too, because a lot of the times you'll see these kids' anxiety and their behaviors come down. And I always say this all the time, like a lot of times when people get these devices, their initial instinct is, oh, we're going to work on requesting. Well, devices aren't just for requesting. Like, it is how they speak. That's how they communicate. So the first thing I usually do is look at feelings, because that's usually what they're trying to communicate. I'm mad, I'm happy, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, basic needs being met. I'm tired, I need to go take a nap. And you'll see these, like, just their facial expression. You'll have a kid that might be having like a meltdown, and you can just say, I see you're sad. And they'll look at you, they're like, yes, I'm sad. And that's all they wanted, was someone to acknowledge their feelings, but they couldn't figure out how to express it. So it really is like magical. And then like sometimes you'll get these kids that, they come in, they have that skill set already. You just kind of like give them the device and they go bananas on it. And you'll just see these kids that have been literally like trapped in their bodies for like 3-4 years. And all of a sudden they have this device. And then again, you're like, where's the off button? We're not having a full-blown conversation about your toys at circle time.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
And that's what I think is why I love it so much, because you can see that progress. And sometimes it takes a long time. And I think too, that's where people get hung up, is because they don't see the student or the child immediately using the device. And they're like, oh, this isn't going to work. And that was me when I first did it. I was like, this isn't going to work. She doesn't get it. But like, give it time. And then you see it work its magic. And you're like, oh, and then you just give them to everybody.
All right. So I want to encourage everybody, we talk about this all the time in our Master IEP Coach mentorship. If you don't know what that is, make sure that you head over to masteriepcoach.com. It's where we're talking in depth about strategies in special education. And I help you kind of dig deep into that IEP paperwork. And there's a piece that I want everybody to be aware of, that when we're specifically talking about assistive technology, high tech or low tech, there is a section in the IEP for training, for staff supports and training. And parents, you can be included in that training. Any training that a parent needs to help a child achieve an IEP goal, they can 100% be included in. So make sure that you, reach out if you're like, I had no idea that we could use this section of training for assistive technology, and that we could include parents in that training. Parents, if you need to advocate for yourself to get, included into this training, just make sure that you're reaching out or head over to masteriepcoach.com. All right. I have a question that we didn't prep for. We don't really prep for these anyway. We kind of have conversations. So we're not like just meeting each other for the first time. So let me see. I don't know if this is going to be a yes or a no, but have you ever had a situation where you thought a device was going to work and you're just like, no, like we gave it the time, we gave it the good old team effort, we've been consistent? Or have you always found some version of something that has worked? Have you ever had a kid just out and out refuse?
Yes, but at the same time, I still stick with it. So like, for instance, I had a kid that, he didn't want to attend to the device. He didn't care about it, nothing, like couldn't be bothered with it. And again, in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? This isn't working. This isn't working. But we stuck with it for about 2.5 years. And lo and behold, after 2.5 years, our friend was pointing at the board. He wasn't necessarily pointing intentful to like a specific symbol, but he knew, I got to point at this thing to make this lady be quiet and get off my back, kind of thing. So we started to see that process. And this is probably my second, third year teaching. So this kid is in like third or fourth grade or something. And I know for a fact, he's now on a high-tech, robust device going ham on it. So yes, in the sense that like, I've been like, what are we doing? This isn't going to work. But again, just being patient and trusting the process. And like, it can be like a lot because you feel like you're being a dead horse. Like, I'm doing this, modeling the same thing over and over every day for like 2 years, like, and you're not getting it, but you got it.
Yes. Right. I love it. All right. So I want everybody to know that you guys can find Lucy over on Instagram. We'll make sure that I put the link there. She also has some resources available on TPT. So some of the tools that she's created for her own classroom and working through figuring out what works and what doesn't work best for her environment, those might be helpful to you. So we'll make sure that you are connected to Lucy so you can find those. All right, let's end with some positive encouragement for the parent and teacher who are, I'm just going to say they're sad. They're sad themselves because they've been working really hard to help this child develop language. They might've tried AAC, maybe they didn't, maybe their district said no, and there's a funding issue in there. But a lot of times this topic brings up a lot of disappointment and frustration and sadness. What are some words of encouragement that you would give to those, that IEP team that's going through that?
At the end of the day, this device we're using it to make a more inclusive environment for the student, to have them have access to their peers, their parents, their teachers. It's all about accessibility and inclusion, and to be able to, so they can not just express their wants and needs, but to share their thoughts and communicate with others around them. So at the end of the day, it is to make a better quality of life for that student. And there's also, like we touched upon it before, there's an abundance of resources. I think I shared those links with you. If like you're totally lost and like you don't know where to go, Project Core is a great resource, free core boards, tons of information. And there's also the Tobii Dynavox, which makes a ton of comm devices. Tobii Dynavox professional resources is like the mecca of everything. They have like just FAQs and AAC 101, but then they also have like free screening tools and assessments. So if you're an educator, an SLP, or a parent and you don't know where to go, like start there.
That's a perfect resource. I love it. Tobii Dynavox. That's been around forever. I share with people like, you know, I was a teacher 20 some years ago in the classroom and we had Tobii Dynavox.
Yeah.
We had that like they are definitely, when you say the mecca of it, I totally got it. Yeah.
Yeah. They're the experts pretty much. And they have like, there's just like, and it's not even just like articles, like they just, there's just so much, there's so many links on that professional resource that they will take you like, we'll link to other things. And it's a wealth of knowledge. But even too with that, like it can be overwhelming. Just remember, like, take baby steps. Like when I first started, when I was like doing aided language simulation and modeling with students, like when I was talking, I wasn't hitting every word as I was saying it. And that's okay. I was learning with my students. It's just like your students have to learn. you have to learn. So don't overthink it and don't get overwhelmed with it. Just take it day by day. Like Rome wasn't built in a day. Good things take time.
I love it. Good things take time. On that note, I want everybody to know, again, check out the show notes, find the link so you can connect with Lucy. You can go jump over to masteriepcoach.com and find more advanced training on the IEP process. We'll put some of those links, Toby Dynavox and Project Core, in there too, so you can find those super easy. Lucy, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, bye everyone. We'll talk to you next time.